Indeed, in recent months, a barrage of cyber attacks have plagued companies, with hackers breaking into the digital vaults of United Health Group, the auction house Christie's, and MGM in Vegas. In each case, the hackers demand big ransoms or threaten to inflict bigger damage. And on Thursday, as we mentioned, a notorious hacker group called Shiny Hunters claims it breached the data of 560 million Ticketmaster users globally in a recent cyber attack, according to multiple reports. Joining us to talk about that and what's going on more broadly, Dave Kennedy, co-founder and chief hacking officer of Binary Defense. Dave, it's good to see you again. And do they just keep getting bigger? What's going on here?
Well, I think you're seeing a lot of success with these ransomware groups. You know, you look a few years ago and they were maybe getting 100,000, 200,000 type of payouts. And they've moved to much larger organizations, like you saw United, MGM, Caesars. And the payouts are astronomical. LFE, one of the largest groups, reportedly out of Russia, is estimated to have over $300 million in ransomware payments alone. So they're making a ton of money going after larger organizations. And that money then is then put into more sophisticated attacks. So they build better weapons to attack these organizations and companies. They're more efficient in what they do. They get affiliates that help them go after these big companies. So it's just scaling. It's essentially a whole nother business revenue model, you know, for these organized crime groups. And they're going after some of the largest companies in the world now because they're having that much success.
If you were consulting, as I assume you do, to some of these big companies, and a company, let's say United Health, is subject to an attack, or Ticketmaster or whomever, and they face ransomware, what would you tell them to do? Pay it?
You know, it's such a tough decision when you're in these organizations. I mean, some of them, you know, if they don't pay it, they're completely going out of business. I mean, I've been in meetings before where I've had the CEO break down, cry because they have to pay a ransom because their business is literally going to go out of business if they don't. And in other cases, you know, you may be able to actually recover, and it's a painful process during that period of time. You look at what MGM was able to do. You know, they experienced over $110 million worth of damage, but did not pay the ransom, whereas Caesars paid, you know, $15 million for the ransom because it was the easiest way to recover. You know, my advice is, based on the situation, you know, is always to not pay the ransom if at all possible. But again, if the business can't operate, they're going to go out of business if they don't. Sometimes the only option is, unfortunately, to pay the ransom.
Does this mean that cybersecurity is not working? What do we know about the cyber defenses that each of these companies have had in place prior to the event?
You know, listen, these companies have full-fledged cybersecurity programs, but the issue that you run into is scale. You know, the larger you are as an organization, the larger your attack surface becomes, you know, more ports and protocols and things, and more services that you use from third parties, cloud providers, which creates these opportunities for these attacks to be successful. It really only takes, you know, one user, for example. If you look at the case of MGM, you know, they're able to use essentially AI voice modulation to remove Russian accents, you know, call up the help desk and then, you know, impersonate somebody. These are, you know, sophisticated attacks, yet very difficult to protect against. It's not that cybersecurity isn't working. It's just the scale of these organizations and companies and how they're kind of modeling how they look at their organization's growth and capacity. Technology, you know, increases complexity within an organization. If they don't have a solid security program based on its foundations, you know, it gets very difficult and challenging for these organizations to really scale their cybersecurity programs, let alone their technology footprint.
Let me ask the same question in a different way. Are the bad guys winning, or are the good guys winning? Who's ahead here?
You know, it's tough because you look at Russia, for example, and, you know, every country is kind of known, or, you know, home locations are always known for their delicacies, right? You look at Chicago, for example, you know, you have your, you know, pan pizzas. You have Ohio, which is known for their majestic pierogies, which is dumplings and you know, potatoes. Russia's known for their organized crime groups and how they, you know, have impunity within the Russian government. So you have these groups that are making hundreds of millions of dollars, sending out, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars of research, development, and sophistication. And then you have, you know, cybersecurity programs that maybe have, you know, $5 million or $10 million, maybe 5 or 6% of the overall IT budget. So the scalability of how much money is being thrown on the attacker side versus defensive is definitely outweighed, especially when you start getting into groups like China, Russia, North Korea. It's a hard scaling issue. The companies are trying as much as they possibly can. But unfortunately, you know, we're still really behind the curve across the United States, across almost all organizations and companies when it comes to trying to withstand these types of attacks.
But Dave, they don't have unlimited, as you know, they don't have unlimited cash to throw at this situation. And if they're going to get hacked anyway with ransom demanded, why waste, you know, just to choose a figure, $1 million a year on cybersecurity that's not going to prevent an attack when you could just pay $15 million for the ransom if it's demanded of you? You know, I mean, it's a very weird situation. Look, a lot of homeowners and car owners grapple with the same kind of thing, you know, or health insurance. You know, do you just take the risk, or do you pay the money and get sick anyway, or have these bills anyway? Do you really, is the industry able to function, or is there something more that needs to be done regulatory wise to try to help these companies out?
That's a great analogy on the payment versus, having to invest into cybersecurity. What I can say is that, if we were able to go in and say like OFAC, for example, go and disable, us being able to pay, the United States being able to pay ransoms via Bitcoin and those types of methods, these ransomware groups would probably shut down within 3 to 6 months, but the United States would experience a substantial amount of pain. So regulatory wise, absolutely, there's things that we can do to reduce the impact of these ransomware groups and the amount of money that they're getting. The problem is they want to go through the pain and suffering of 3 to 6 months of organizations that wouldn't be able to recover from these. I think the big thing here on cybersecurity is that, it is all about reducing risk. It's not eliminating risk, as is anything you get insurance. It's, helping with situations that you didn't think would actually occur. Cybersecurity is very much the same thing. What these organizations really need to focus on is reducing the risk in their core critical systems like customer information, intellectual property, trade secrets. Focus on those, scalability wise, and then work on the rest of the organization as you go along. And I think a lot of them miss that mark. They try to secure everything, which isn't necessarily possible.
Very interesting. And I note that, the cyber stocks have done very well, but it does feel like perhaps they need to show more for what they're doing.
We have to get better. We absolutely do. I mean, these are the largest breaches we've ever seen, in our lifetimes, and they're only going to grow. They're only going to get larger, and they're only going to impact, many more people. Ticketmaster, 500 million plus. We're seeing these happen all the time now. It's time to step up and really defend our personal information, and intellectual property, everything else that we have here.
And the whole industry, really. Dave, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Dave Kennedy
Absolutely.
with Binary.